did you know that Prince Harry is going to war against the Daily Mail? And he's not the only one. Both Harry and Elton John were in court on Monday as a part of an explosive new lawsuit that they brought against the publisher of the Daily Mail called Associated Newspapers. They claim that in an effort to dig up dirt on celebrities, the newspaper is responsible for abhorrent criminal activity and gross breaches of privacy. This allegedly includes the placing of listening devices in their homes and on their cars, bugging their phone calls, and paying police for information. But the celebrities involved in this lawsuit are not backing down without a fight. About half a dozen high-profile figures have now joined together to take legal action. This includes actress Sadie Frost and Elizabeth Hurley, filmmaker David Furnish, and Baroness Doreen Lawrence. The 4-day preliminary hearing in London will end with the judge deciding whether or not the case will go any further. David Sherborne, the lawyer for the group of celebrities, released a statement about the case. He said, "The claimants each claim that in different ways they were the victim of numerous unlawful acts carried out by the defendant, or by those acting on the instructions of the newspapers, the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday." He said the alleged unlawful activity included illegally intercepting voicemail messages, listening into live landline calls, obtaining private information like itemized phone bills or medical records by deception or blagging. He said that these incidents ranged through a period from 1993 to 2011, and some of them even continuing until 2018. The High Court has now heard from Harry about how these incidents affected his mental health and his personal relationships. He claims that this massive invasion of privacy deprived him of important aspects of his teenage years. He knew the Daily Mail had unlawful ways of gathering information, and he actually believed they were using the people closest to him to do it. He then became suspicious of everyone around him, and so paranoid that he had to cut off certain friends. At one point, he viewed his peers as potential suspects who were willing to sell him out to the newspaper. So how did he find out about all of this? Well, apparently several private investigators that were working for the newspaper actually admitted to these illegal practices. It turns out the targets were Harry, his friends, and any potential romantic partner in his life. As a part of his testimony, he brought up his former girlfriend Chelsea Davy and the media's relentless coverage of them. The information that kept getting leaked about the couple created a terrifying situation. Harry said, "Their behavior and treatment of Chelsea was not normal. I was scared that Chelsea was going to run in the opposite direction or be chased and harassed to death." He said he went to extreme lengths to protect their privacy, but it was impossible. These continued invasions into his personal life eventually put a strain on all of his relationships. For their part, Associated Papers rebutted the allegations and said that Harry's claims appeared to be based on a confession by a private investigator, but they say that that investigator now denies that they paid him to do anything illegal. During his testimony, Harry also accused the royal family of withholding information from him for a long time about phone hacking. In a written statement, he said, "The institution made it clear that we did not need to know anything about phone hacking, and it was made clear to me that the royal family did not sit in the witness box because that could open up a can of worms." He went on to explain how he found out that other people within the royal family had brought phone hacking claims against the press. Quote, "It was not an exaggeration to say that the bubble burst in terms of what I knew in 2020. When I moved out of the United Kingdom, there was never any centralized discussion between us about who had brought claims, as each office in the institution is siloed. There is this misconception that we are all in constant communication with one another, but that is not true." So basically, he found out that the institution had intentionally left him in the dark, even though they knew his privacy was being seriously invaded. This is a pretty big accusation to level against the royal family, but by now, after everything else that Harry has accused them of, it's not really that surprising. His hatred of the British tabloids is also no secret. We know that he blames the press for the death of his mother, Princess Diana. His wife, Meghan Markle, has also had her own battles with the press. In 2018, she sued Associated Newspapers Limited over 5 articles that they published, which included parts of the letter that she sent to her father, Thomas Markle. It took 3 whole years, but she eventually won her case. When Judge Mark Warby ruled in her favor, he decided that Meghan had a reasonable expectation that the contents of the letter would remain private, and that the articles had interfered with that reasonable expectation. In a statement of her own, Meghan called for a reshaping of the tabloid newspaper industry, and said that she had been patient in the face of deception, intimidation, and calculated attacks. So it's no wonder that Harry is also choosing to stand up to the British press with his latest legal battle against Associated Newspapers. Moving on, it looks like the controversy surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle might just be too much for the King's coronation. A recent poll of the British public came through with some unsurprising results. Out of the 2,000 people surveyed, most would prefer if they were not at the coronation. The survey also found 1 in 5 Britons said they were less likely to watch the event if the royal couple ended up attending. Royal biographers believe that these results spell disaster for Meghan and Harry. Harry, the public reaction to them is still looking unfavorable. In fact, it's even been suggested that they will be booed by the crowd if they do show up. TV analyst Jeff Ritchie said, with less than 2 months until the king's coronation, speculation about the Sussexes' appearance has so far overshadowed all other build-up. This latest research shows that even some dedicated royal watchers will be reaching for the remote if the Duke and Duchess appear on their screens. Despite the fact that they are invited, apparently Meghan and Harry are yet to RSVP, so at this point it's still possible that they might decide to reject their invitations. After the release of Spare, the couple have seemingly lost all contact with the rest of the royal family. At the moment, they are said to be negotiating terms before the event. Sources close to the palace have said that they have set out a series of demands. These reportedly include specific security arrangements and celebrating their son's 4th birthday, which falls on the exact same day. But according to a report from the Mirror, Harry and Meghan have another condition. They will only attend the coronation if the vibes aren't toxic. A source close to the couple said, Harry has been very clear and his position hasn't wavered. He isn't going to come if he feels the atmosphere will be as toxic as it was during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. He said he wants to reconcile with his family and it's their call, but so far nothing has changed. So it looks like he's still not on speaking terms with the rest of his family. Possible that things will change as the event draws nearer, but that means that they'll have less than 2 months to patch things up. Otherwise, it's going to be incredibly uncomfortable for everyone involved if Harry and Meghan show up to the coronation and they get the cold shoulder from the rest of the family. Not only that, but the public's opinion of them is still very divided. Even fellow celebrities can't seem to agree on how they feel about the couple. Earlier this month, the star of Succession, Brian Cox, made headlines when he called BS on Meghan Markle's story. He said she knew what she was getting into when she married Prince Harry. He believes that she had ambitions of joining the royal family and childhood dreams of marrying Prince Charming. Quote, you can't go into a system where somebody's already been trained to behave in a certain kind of way and then just expect them to cut themselves off. I mean, she knew what she was getting into. Of course, Brian's comments earned him quite a bit of backlash, and he had to clarify that they were taken way out of context. He said, I actually have enormous sympathy for them. They're the product of an institution which is moribund and shouldn't exist anymore. But that's a difficult situation where Meghan comes from, and it's understandable that she sees something appealing and it does look like a fairy tale, but it was a fairy tale that went horribly wrong. The actor went on to say that Harry and Meghan are victims of their situation. He believes they were genuine in claiming that royal life took a toll on them. He said, I don't know what went on, but something clearly traumatic went on for the pair of them. I don't think they made it up. I don't think it's false. I think it's true and should have been rectified, and it hasn't. Brian is also a famous anti-monarchist and believes that in this day and age, the royal family simply should not exist. Now, this argument has been around for a very long time, and Brian is certainly not the only person who believes it. In response to these kind of sentiments, the institution has gone to great lengths to ensure the royal family remains relevant and popular. But there is something decidedly more modern about King Charles. He's always been very outspoken about issues close to his heart, even if they weren't very popular at the time. For instance, he's been a strong climate change activist and has been speaking out about it since the 60s. He's backed the 2015 Paris Climate Accord and discussed the issue with Donald Trump during his visit in 2019. I mean, even his coronation is set to be as modern as tradition allows. Buckingham Palace said the ceremony will reflect the king's role today as well as the future of the monarchy. Charles and Camilla will be crowned in the Abbey in a service conducted by the Archbishop of Canterbury. He will still pledge to be the defender of the faith, but there will also be other words included in the oath that show the king serves all religions. This will be done to reflect the diversity of modern Britain. The event will have around 2,000 guests, including heads of state from all around the world. Of course, the whole thing will be televised, and most likely millions of viewers will be tuning in to watch. Let me know in the comments below if you're going to be one of those people. We now have a list of all the illegal substances Prince Harry has used and recommended. On Saturday, Harry sat down for a trauma therapy session with Dr. Gabor Mate, and the whole conversation was live streamed. Not everyone thinks that was a good idea because the revelations in this conversation will likely come back to bite him. The two men covered a range of topics from Harry's use of psychedelics to the war in Afghanistan and the multi-generational emotional issues in his family. In fact, Harry really drove home that last one. We already suspected that the royals are not exactly huggers, but when Mate suggested he had a childhood that was deprived of touch, he agreed. Apparently, he was traumatized by his father's lack of physical affection, which never really went beyond a touch on the shoulder or the knee. This is something that Harry is very concerned about passing on to his own children, Archie and Lilibet. He said, "It leaves me in the position of a father having two children trying trying to smother them with love. I feel a huge responsibility not to pass on any trauma or negative experiences that I've had as a kid or as a man growing up. There are times when I catch myself when I should be smothering them with that love, but I might not be. So even though he doesn't entirely blame Charles for his lack of physical affection, Harry said he's now focused on breaking the cycle in his own family. He also condemns the kind of life they lead and describes them all as being in an unhealthy gilded cage. So again, he's doubling down on the idea that William and Kate are all very cold with each other, even behind closed doors. According to Harry, it was Meghan that saved him from this. He said, "I was stuck in this world and she was from a different world and helped draw me out of that. But none of the elements of my life now would have been possible without me seeing it for myself." Now we get into the most controversial part of the session. Eventually the conversation turned to substances that he may have used to try and mask his trauma. Harry admitted that the infamous powdery substance didn't actually do anything for him, while the leafy green stuff really did help. But out of everything that he's tried, it's psychedelics that really blew his mind. He said, "I started doing it recreationally and then started to realize how good it was for me." In his book, we learned that he once took mushrooms at a party at Courtney Cox's house, and the results were interesting, but now he admits to doing a little bit more than that. He revealed to Dr. Mattei that he once tried which is a hallucinogenic drink that's made by brewing the leaves of plants from the Amazon rainforest into a tea. He described the experience as cleaning a dirty windscreen and removing the filters that he saw life through. Quote, "It removed it all for me, and it brought me a sense of relaxation, release, comfort, a lightness that I imagined to hold on to for a long period of time." This is obviously something that the doctor would have agreed with, because in 2011, Mattei was sternly warned by Health Canada against using the plant in treatments. Today, he's still a huge advocate of the substance when it comes to mental health care, but that's part of what makes him so controversial. Although Harry has a very positive outlook on these substances, he made it clear that he's very skeptical about Big Pharma. He asked Mattei's opinion on prescriptions in a sort of way that made it seem like he's not a believer himself. Later he brought up the highly contested theory that doctors are paid more when they prescribe medication. Overall, it was this part of the conversation that was really criticized. Journalist and Dr. Max Pemberton called his comments hugely irresponsible. He said, "Harry plainly has no understanding of the serious damage these substances can wreak on users, damage that I see on mental health hospital wards with upsetting frequency." In one of the stranger moments of the livestream, Harry looked visibly uncomfortable when Mattei began to diagnose him with various mental health conditions. During the session, he got diagnosed with PTSD, depression, and ADD, or attention deficit disorder. Even though he was clearly surprised, Harry sort of goes along with it and says, "Okay, should I just accept that or should I look into it?" The doctor insists that he can do whatever he wants with that information. But it was obviously a bit of an awkward moment and very difficult to watch. Harry also confessed that he actually reads the Amazon reviews of his book, which means that he's clearly keeping tabs on what everyone's been saying about him. Moving on, did you know that Meghan Markle is getting sued for defamation? It's now come out that the Sussexes will have to give separate testimony under oath as a part of a lawsuit brought against Meghan by Samantha Markle, her half-sister. She's seeking damages in excess of $75,000. The Duchess is being sued for defamation and injurious falsehood after the couple's 2021 interview with Oprah Winfrey, where Samantha claims that Meghan made demonstrably false and malicious statements against her to a worldwide audience, including the roughly 50 million people in 17 countries who watched the interview. The 58-year-old claims that the interview subjected her to humiliation, shame, and hatred on a worldwide scale, and that Meghan spread lies worldwide about her father, Thomas Markle. She alleges that the Duchess orchestrated a premeditated campaign to defame and destroy her sister and her father's reputation. Under the order, Meghan and Harry will be forced to answer questions regarding various public statements that they have made, including as to whether they think the members of the royal family are racist. The 41-year-old actress had attempted to stop the depositions, but her request to the judge was dismissed. The couple filed a motion to block them in the case, but the judge dismissed the motion on Tuesday, saying that Meghan does not satisfy the high standard required to stop the formal testimony. So what kind of malicious lies brought about this lawsuit? Well, during the Oprah interview, Meghan made various claims about their childhood. She said that she grew up as an only child, and that she and her older sister were virtually strangers, and they had no relationship whatsoever. Now obviously these claims did not paint Samantha in the best light, because she's 17 years older than Meghan, so most people would have thought that she was the one who abandoned her younger sister. For her part, Samantha claims that the two of them had frequent and regular contact with each other throughout Meghan's childhood. In fact, she claims that Meghan constructed a false rags to royalty narrative that was damaging to both herself and Thomas. She also denies the claim that she changed her last name to Markle after the news first broke out in 2018 that Meghan and Prince Harry were dating. Her attorney released a statement saying, "As to whether we will need Harry's deposition, that decision is yet to be made. Obviously, if the Duchess would want to call him, we would need to take his deposition. Otherwise, we will probably still want to inquire as to some issues." According to The Independent, there has also been a mediator appointed to the case, with the hope of resolving the lawsuit without the need to go to trial. The planned depositions come right after Meghan and Harry's Netflix series and the publication of Harry's memoir Spare. Both of these projects came with a fair amount of backlash, but many people thought that Meghan used the documentary as a way to hit back at her sister. In the series, she claimed that she hadn't seen Samantha for over a decade and had little to no relationship with her, but apparently she was suddenly everywhere when her relationship with Harry went public. She said, "I don't know your middle name, I don't know your birthday. You're telling these people you raised me and you coined me Princess Pushy. I hadn't had a fallout with her. We didn't have a closeness to be able to have that. And I wanted a sister." She was referring to the book that Samantha released in 2021 called The Diary of Princess Pushy's Sister Part 1, which is 330 pages long. She's also complained on Twitter about not being invited to their wedding. She wrote, "Out of respect and humanitarianism, the Markles should be invited if 2,000 complete strangers are. Our uncle, brother, me, best friend of 30 years, nephews. The issue is not a matter of closeness. Family is family." At the time, her mother Doria Raglan was the only family member of Meghan's to attend the ceremony, but there is a good reason for that. The Duchess has said that her father's side of her family is the one who keeps speaking out against her, not her mother's side. But in the third episode of the documentary series, the audience is introduced to someone called Ashley Hale, who is Meghan's niece and the daughter of Samantha. This is where we learn that she's become very close with her niece over the years, and said that she was heartbroken when she was told by the palace that she couldn't come to her 2018 wedding, because it would look bad if Ashley was invited but Samantha wasn't. Although since that revelation has been made public, several anonymous sources at the palace have come out and denied those claims. One of them spoke to the Sunday Times and said, "That just didn't happen. We never gave any advice, steer, or guidance on who of her family friends should or shouldn't come." They further explained that Meghan wanted to shield Ashley from the onslaught of media attention and said that it was her who decided not to invite her niece. Quote, "It was not a question she put to us. We would never tell her not to invite her own niece, and we would never get involved in any management of personal relationships." Another royal insider said, "Meghan didn't want the media to know about Ashley. No one on earth would have said don't invite family to the wedding. That's a complete and utter lie." But whatever the case, it's no secret that her relationship with some members of her family have always been difficult, and with this defamation case going on, it's probably going to get even worse. Next up, it looks like America has finally turned on Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. The royals were reportedly snubbed from Oprah Winfrey's 69th birthday party. It seemed to have every single Hollywood A-lister in attendance. The couple's absence from the event has been raising eyebrows, considering that they were said to be on good terms with Oprah. It's possible that Harry and Meghan had prior engagements and they were simply not able to make the party, or they were purposely avoiding the event ahead of King Charles's coronation. Now, several royal commentators have come through with their own opinion on the matter. They believe that the couple have only themselves to blame for not getting an invite. The Spectator's Cara Kennedy thinks that they might have fallen out of favor in Hollywood after the release of Harry's bombshell memoir Spare. She wrote, "It's easy to see why Oprah wouldn't want the pair at her birthday shindig after Harry's latest revelations." She referred to one of Harry's promo interviews for Spare, where he denied that he ever called his family racist, despite the fact that he told Oprah a whole different story. In his 2021 interview, Harry specifically said that a member of the royal family had questioned his son's skin tone, and he suggested that this question had racial undertones. And recently, during his interview with Tom Bradby, he was asked, "In the Oprah interview, you accused members of your family of racism," but in response he said, "No, I didn't. The British press said that." He then claimed that there was concern about his son's skin color, to which Tom asked, "Would that not be described as essentially racist?" In response, Harry claimed that it was only unconscious bias and not actually racism. Cara Kennedy argued that the fact that he changed his whole story made Oprah look stupid. She said, "The interview with Oprah was not an attempt to speak truth, nor was it an attempt at reconciliation. This was Harry and Meghan's campaign to finish off the British monarchy, and they used her as a pawn." But whatever the case may be, that was not the only time that the couple were caught changing their story. 5 years ago, the Sussexes told the world that they met via a friend who set them up on a blind date. They revealed this in an interview with the BBC, which was organized for the announcement of their engagement. Harry said, "When we first met, we were introduced actually by a mutual friend," before he was interrupted interrupted by Meghan, who said we should protect her privacy. But in the documentary, the couple tell Netflix that that interview was completely rehearsed and more like an orchestrated reality show. They're now saying that they actually met on Instagram when Harry spotted Meghan in a mutual friend's feed. They did a complete 180 on that story. It does sound more realistic now, but it's weird that they casually admitted to lying about how they met. Quote, Meghan and I met over Instagram. I was scrolling through my feed and someone who was a friend had a video of them. It was like a Snapchat. It was dog ears. Not only that, but they previously claimed that Harry proposed during a normal night where the two of them were roasting chicken. And they've now said that that proposal took place during an evening picnic in the garden. All things considered, it's a little strange that they managed to come up with two different stories and admitted that the interviews they've given before were totally fake. Apart from those inconsistencies, Meghan also came under fire for claiming that she's had no royal lessons whatsoever before marrying into the family. During the documentary, she brought up the 2001 film The Princess Diaries while she was talking about learning royal protocol in the early stages of her relationship with Harry. And according to the Duchess, she did not get the same training that Mia received from her grandmother, the Queen of Genovia. She said, there's no class where some person goes sit like this, cross your legs like this, use this fork, don't do this, curtsy then, wear this kind of hat. It doesn't happen. So I needed to learn a lot, including the national anthem. It was baptism by fire. Rather than consulting one of Harry's family members, Meghan insisted that she simply Googled the national anthem and practiced waving etiquette all on her own. Basically, she complained that she was left floundering with no instruction and struggling with what to wear and was forced to learn a lot on her own. Harry said that the lack of support was just ridiculous. But royal sources have since come out claiming that this was a total lie and that Meghan actually met with two experts, the late Queen's private secretary Lord Gates, as well as a well-connected person for wardrobe advice. But regardless of whether or not she really had any help, really there would have been a lot of royal etiquette to learn on her own. That couldn't have been easy for her no matter which way you look at it. Next up, would you watch Prince Harry unpack his trauma in a live stream? He clearly has a lot more that he wants to get off his chest. So what he's going to do is sit down with a trauma therapist and talk it out. Harry will be having an intimate conversation with Dr. Gabor Mate, and that's something that you can actually be a part of for $33.99. People who purchase tickets will get to ask questions in real time, and those tickets come with a copy of his memoir Spare. Dr. Mate has said that the stream will deep dive into the importance of personal healing and touch on the impact of emotional loss. He hopes that the session with Harry can spark an open discussion about mental health. Mate's background is in dealing with childhood development, trauma, and its potential lifelong impacts on your physical and mental health. When speaking about the live stream session, he said, such a public conversation, I hope, will help encourage more openness around mental health and contribute to remove the stigma around what we call mental illness. I think a discussion of loss, trauma, and healing is of interest to people at all levels of society. Already people on Twitter are reacting to the event, which seems to have everyone divided. Charlie Kirk wrote, Prince Harry will sit down with a trauma expert live on pay-per-view to work through his emotional issues. Harry, who has often complained about unwanted media attention, will charge audiences $33.99 for the live experience. Ada Lodge tweeted, Prince Harry is going to do a live stream conversation with a trauma expert to help him overcome the extremely difficult life he's had as a literal prince living in Buckingham Palace. Give me a break. But it could just be that Harry wants a chance to reflect on the revelations in his memoir. In Spare, he admitted that he struggled with agoraphobia, which is an anxiety disorder that causes intense fear in certain situations, like when you're in a large crowd. This fear can get so bad that people who suffer from it avoid leaving home altogether. Harry said, I was an agoraphobe, which was nearly impossible given my public role. My official life consisted of going out in public, engaging in discussions, debates, and giving interviews. And suddenly I found myself almost incapable of doing these basic functions. He also recalled that he nearly fainted during one speech that couldn't be avoided or cancelled. In his 20s, he developed severe anxiety and had panic attacks, so he decided to self-medicate with alcohol and illicit substances. In one chapter of the book, he recalled a conversation with his father from the early 2010s, when he finally opened up to him about what he's been dealing with. In response, Charles simply lowered his head and said, I suppose it's my fault. I should have gotten you the help you needed years ago. It turns out that a lot of his anxiety came from unresolved anger over his mother's death. Harry said, I was so angry with what happened to her and the fact that there was no justice at all. Nothing came from that. The same people that chased her into the tunnel photographed her dying on the back seat of that car. One day his therapist pointed out that he often reverted to a 12-year-old version of himself because he never actually processed Diana's death. In another part of the book, Harry revealed that he drove through that same Paris tunnel where his mother died in 1997 and purposely asked the driver to drive at the exact same speed that she was going when her car crashed. Apparently he and William believed that for many years she might have faked her death and would one day return into their lives. Another massive contributor to his mental health issues was a PTSD that he suffered as a result of his time in the military. In what was perhaps the most controversial part of the book, Harry revealed that he had 25 people while he served as an Apache helicopter co-pilot in Afghanistan. He wrote that he felt neither satisfaction nor shame for his actions, and in the heat of battle he thought of the enemy soldiers as pieces being removed from a chessboard. He also said that most soldiers don't know exactly how many people they have killed, because under battle conditions you often fire indiscriminately. At some point after returning home in 2013, he started developing panic and anxiety attacks, and eventually he realized that he could be suffering from PTSD. So Harry's clearly had his own battle with mental health over the years, and that's something that he wants to continue sharing with the world.
Coming at number 10 today, we have Howard Stern. Howard Stern is not holding anything back when it comes to his opinion on the Sussexes, especially when it comes to Prince Harry. When the 68-year-old radio personality spoke out about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's new Netflix docuseries, Harry and Meghan, during an episode of his Sirius XM show, he would say, "It's been painful. I wouldn't stay with it, but my wife, Beth Stern, wants to watch it, so you know, we have shows we watch, but they come off like such whiny bees." Howard would then go on to say, "I gotta tell you, man, I just don't get it, and honestly, I think we're just as confused as Howard, as the whole film was just old stories they have said in every single interview with no proof to back up their claims." While Howard did feel bad for Harry because he did lose his mother, Princess Diana, at such a young age, he definitely is not a big fan on how Meghan and Harry have gone about to tell their story on how things all went wrong and why they have chosen to walk away from their royal duties. Stern would also go on to say, "When those two start whining about wah, they don't like me and she wants to be beloved in this country, but man, oh man, you know, it's just very weird to watch two people who keep screaming, we want our privacy, we wanted the press to leave us alone, and what is their special they put on Netflix showing you them and their kids and their life? It's like the Kardashians, except boring." Number 9, Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan has made his feelings very clear on Prince Harry's latest tell-all interviews, calling them delusional, paranoid, and pathetic. This would come after Harry spoke with ITV, Tom Bradby, and CNN's Anderson Cooper on Sunday night about the revelations in his new autobiography, Spare. The book, officially launched on Tuesday, would reveal a number of revelations, like the time William and Harry had a confrontation over Meghan and William pushed Harry to the ground. When Harry sat down with ITV on Sunday after the interview, Piers was definitely not impressed, and he would head to Twitter to say, "Never seen an unhappier happy man in my life." Prince Harry's bitter, delusional, paranoid, family trashing, half-wit exposing and exploiting the royals' most personal secrets for gazillions, while it's wanging on with jaw-dropping hypocrisy about media intrusion. He's pathetic. With Harry speaking to Bradby about his current relationship with the royal family in his upcoming book release, when he was asked whether he was looking back too much, Harry would say, "We always knew that these two projects, both the Netflix documentary and the book, one being our story and one very much being my story, they were look-back projects, and I'm sure once Piers finishes reading his book, he's only gonna have a lot more to say about Harry's story." Hey my little peaches, are you liking this video so far? If so, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Coming at number 8, we have Dan Wooten. Dan Wooten has had enough of Harry's deranged campaign against media devils in the royals, as he believed Harry is trying to destroy Charles, Camilla, and William over leaks and briefings. In a column posted to the Daily Mail, Dan would say that the fairy tale goes that this selfish couple were forced to smash relations with the British royal relatives and flee the country because of a vicious briefing campaign launched against them, even seeing the press conspire with the institution and senior members of the royal family to drive out such a popular pair, and that the narrative was actually really deranged. Dan would also go on to note that the story was invented and designed by sniveling Harry and fake Meghan to avoid taking any of their own behavior, including credible claims of bullying against staff by the American diva. At the end of the article, Dan would then note that enough is enough and it's time for the woke media to stop giving giving the Duke of Sussex an easy ride and realized that the damage he is causing to democracy with his falsehoods, distortion, and deranged attacks designed to cause further damage to freedom of the press in Britain. Number 7, Candace Owens. Candace Owens has finally entered the chat, and it was kind of shocking to see what she had to say about the revelations in Prince Harry's new memoir, Spare. The controversial political commentator decided to weigh in on Harry's new memoir, in which the Duke of Sussex has made some major bombshell remarks about the tension between him and the British royal family. On Sunday, after Harry's interview with ITV, Candace would head to her Instagram account to say, Meghan putting pregnancy tests next to locks of Prince Diana's hair, plus asking for private moments at Diana's gravesite to speak to her, are not things to laugh at. Instead of laughing, Candace would call Meghan's behavior terrifyingly psychopathic and manipulative actions. Candace would then go on to conclude that Meghan is dangerous before noting through a hashtag that the Duke of Sussex has gone mad. Candace was referring to Harry's claim in the book that he and his brother Prince William each have a lock of their mother's hair, which is cut from her head by her sister shortly after her passing. Number 6, Jason Williamson. Jason Williamson has gone the extra mile when it came to showing his dislike of Prince Harry when he wrote a scathing open letter that was published in Britain's most left-wing newspaper. When Jason decided to vent after learning that Harry was due to visit Nottingham, hometown, alongside of Meghan Markle for their first joint official engagement, the pair headed to the city to witness various charity initiatives in action. But it seems fair to say that Williamson wasn't feeling particularly charitable in his response. The outspoken frontman described Harry's engagement to Meghan in The Guardian as being heinously over-publicized and continued to bring up dark tendencies of Harry's ancestors and referred to him and his family as both being psychopaths and monsters. He would then conclude, "We are apologists, never-ending apologists, who will gush at Harry's perceived interest in the youth program he is currently involved with in the St. Anne's area. He doesn't give a toss about those people. This only serves to strengthen his family's position as relevant and merciful." He would then proceed to say, "Go home, Rambo. Nottingham doesn't need you." Number 5, Christy Alsop. Location presenter Christy Alsop took to Twitter on Sunday to slam both Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Following Harry's latest interview with ITV, the Duke of Sussex defended his explosive new memoir, Spare, during a talk with presenter Tom Bradby at his California home. After watching the interview, Christy would be left feeling entirely unimpressed with how Prince Harry came across and questioned his true intentions behind releasing the book. And she would say, "So they're in bed with the devil, but Harry's just chatting to Tom Bradby on primetime ITV for what?" Soon after her first initial tweet, she would then tweet, "What work? Your book? This interview? It isn't about service or charity. This is about you. Sick." And let's be honest, Harry and Meghan have briefed again. Number 4, Sharon Osborne. Talk TV host Sharon Osborne and her panel discussed clips from the Duke of Sussex explosive television interviews, which were broadcasted on CBS and ITV on Sunday. During the debate, Sharon noted that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's young children will grow up with no family on either parent's side. The 7-year-old then branded the situation as being ugly and very sad. During Tuesday's installment of her Talk TV show, Sharon claimed that the younger generation still supports Harry and Meghan's decision to start a new life in California. However, she added, older generations have definitely had it up to here with all the whining, and it's definitely just younger kids that still support them. She would then also remind the panel how all families argue and tell views, as it's normal to row with loved ones. Which is the truth. I have 5 siblings, and I know times get tough, but I would never air out our rows for the whole world to see, because that just seems a little bit childish, especially when you're trying to claim you want your family back in your life. Sharon would then note that the children will now be forced to grow up with no family, and it's just a terrible thing for any child to go through. Number 3, Kathy Griffin. Kathy Griffin was not impressed by how Prince Harry and Meghan Markle met, and even compared the royal to the controversial actor Armie Hammer. Kathy went on to say, "They met on freaking Instagram. Prince Harry was flipping through his Instagram, looking at hot brunettes like every other guy in LA. I'm disappointed. I thought it was going to be a great love story. Prince Harry is like Armie freaking Hammer. What if Prince Harry's the new House of Hammer?" With Armie recently being accused of sending some woman some pretty disturbing DMs, Kathy would go on to tease that her favorite thing would be comparing Harry to the disgraced actor, and she was seemingly only referring to the way he met Meghan and not the disturbing allegations that were made about Army. Kathy would also go on to note that Meghan and Harry both keep acting like they can do so much good for the world, which is great and inspirational, but when's the last time a royal did anything that helped the world? And I'm honestly stumped when it comes to answering that question, but if you can answer it, let us know in the comments below. Number 2, Bethany Frankel. Bethany Frankel, an outspoken critic of Prince Harry and Meghan, explained why she is so obsessed with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex by saying it was because of a greater meaning. Bethany would go on to explain that she feels Harry's bombshell memoir, Spare, in which he drags his royal family members, did more harm than good for him and his wife. Bethany would go on to say, to scorch the earth and burn the bridges and handle a situation in such reckless, outrageous manner doesn't achieve the results. The royal family is more popular than they were before you started the circus. Bethany would then go on to suggest that even if Harry was trying to highlight greater issues like racism and mental health struggles, he failed to make real change because the public is too focused on the drama of all of it. By saying the focus is on this whole massive charade versus the actual issues, versus anyone talking about actual racism in society as it pertains to this matter, or the mental health of it, of the sibling rivalry, or the relentlessness of the paparazzi, and in life and business. I've learned that you don't take every single opportunity to scorch and torch the joint. While Bethany would then go on to slam the prince, she would also offer some sound advice when she said, you might be able to get further by playing chess and not checkers. While I've worked with many different people in my career, there have been issues that I would like to change. Instead of scorching the earth because I was scorned, I handled them professionally, and this is so much more important because this is about someone's family. And coming in at number 1 today, we have Paul Burrell. Paul Burrell hit back at the criticism from Prince Harry by saying he doesn't recognize the young man he sees today. In Harry's controversial memoir Spare, the Duke of Sussex said Diana's former butler was milking her, passing for money when he publicized his 2001 book, A Royal Duty, which contained a raft of private revelations. But appearing on Australian breakfast show Sunrise, Paul would say, I first met him in his mummy's tummy. I don't recognize the young man I see today. That's not the boy I knew. What I see now is an angry, petulant, privileged prince who is consistently blaming other people and not taking accountability for his own part. Speaking from his home in Florida, Paul would then go on to know that the Duke has changed fundamentally and that his mother would be appalled. She would be angry at these personal, vindictive revelations, which don't just undermine Harry but his country, his family, and the institution, which his mother was very proud of, and his late grandmother's legacy. Paul then went on to blame Harry's wife Meghan for the Duke's vindictive behavior, claiming she was the one driving him behind the scenes.
Number 10, Kate and Meghan never got along. In the book, Harry describes a confrontation between his sister-in-law and his wife after she said that Kate must have baby brain because of her hormones when she forgot something. This all happened during a discussion ahead of Harry and Meghan's 2018 wedding. Kate had just given birth to her third child, Prince Louis, 1 month before the wedding, and she made it apparent that she didn't appreciate Meghan's comments. Apparently it caused such a huge row because Meghan was told that she wasn't close enough to her sister-in-law to discuss her hormones, and it wasn't the way people spoke to each other within the royal family. For her part, Meghan became offended by the reprimand and didn't seem to think that she said anything wrong. Harry also spoke to ITV's Tom Bradby over the weekend and recalled the moment when he first told William and Kate about his relationship. He said there was a lot of stereotyping that was happening, and I was guilty of that as well at the beginning and around her being an American actress. Some of the ways that my brother and sister-in-law were acting felt to me as though, unfortunately, that stereotyping was causing a bit of a barrier to them to introduce or welcome her into the family. Bradby then asked, the impression is that from the get-go they didn't get on. Fair? To which Harry simply agreed. Number 9, William warned him about Meghan. In another part of the book, Harry reveals that his older brother cautioned him about moving too quickly with Meghan, which only precipitated further fractures in their relationship. He apparently told Harry that he needed to slow down in his relationship because after all, she was an American actress. Ignoring the advice, Harry and Meghan got engaged just after 1 year of dating. Apparently this is when the tension between William, Kate, Harry, and Meghan only escalated. Kate allegedly took offense to Meghan's request to borrow her lip gloss before a joint public appearance, and for her part, Meghan was reduced to tears on the floor after Kate objected to the size of Princess Charlotte's bridesmaid's dress and requested that it was remade 4 days before the wedding. During his interview, Harry said, "I had to put a lot of hope into the idea that, it would be William and Kate and me and whoever. I thought the four of us would bring me and William closer together. We could go out and do work together, which I did a lot as a third wheel to them, which was fun at times, but also, I guess, slightly awkward." Harry said that he didn't think they were ever expecting him to get into a relationship with someone like Meghan because of her career, and clearly that conflict never fully went away. Number 8, he always hated Camilla. According to a leaked excerpt of the book, Harry recalled that he and his brother were initially resistant to the idea of their father marrying Camilla Parker Bowles, following their parents' divorce and the death of their mother Diana in 1997. Harry explained that his initial fears were that Camilla might be cruel to him, like all the wicked stepmothers in the stories, and even though his feelings changed after meeting privately with her, he and William still didn't like the idea of their father walking down the aisle with the other woman. Harry literally refers to Camilla as the other woman in his book, and he said that both he and William told Charles that they would forgive her and welcome her into the family if he promised never to marry her. Quote, "You do not need to remarry, we begged him. A wedding would make the whole country, the whole world, compare our mother and Camilla, something that nobody wanted, although we know that Charles would end up ignoring his son's pleas, and the couple would eventually tie the knot in 2005, a full 8 years after the death of Diana." In a shocking passage elsewhere in the book, Harry compares meeting her for the first time to getting an injection. He said, "Close your eyes and you won't even feel it." He also hated the fact that his stepmother made his childhood bedroom into a dressing room after he moved out of Clarence's house. So obviously both brothers detested the fact that Camilla would even attempt to replace their mother. Number 7, he took 25 lives in Afghanistan. One part of Harry's memoir that has drawn global condemnation was his assertion that he killed 25 people while serving in the army in Afghanistan. Specifically, he claims that he's taken the lives of more than 24 Taliban militants while serving as an Apache helicopter co-pilot from 2012 to 2013. He wrote that he felt neither satisfaction nor shame for his actions, and in the heat of battle he thought of the enemy soldiers as pieces being removed from a chessboard, quote, "baddies being eliminated before they could kill goodies." So it's no surprise why this passage was extremely controversial, so much so that it not only drew outrage from the Taliban, but also from British veterans. Colonel Tim Collins, who led a British battalion during the Iraq War, told Forces News that Harry's statement was distasteful and said, "That's not how you behave in the army. It's not how we think." Of course, Harry is a veteran himself, having done 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan during his 10 years in the army. He's previously talked about his combat experience, saying near the end of his tour in 2013, "If there's people trying to do bad stuff to our guys, then we'll have to take them out of the game." He also said that most soldiers don't know exactly how many people they've killed because under battle conditions, you would often fire indiscriminately. But he also claimed that everything he did during his time in Afghanistan was recorded and time-stamped, so he could always tell exactly how many enemy combatants he had killed. Number 6, the best man lied. In his memoir, Harry claims that he was not the real best man at the wedding of his brother, and said that the pretense was carried out on behalf of 2 of William's closest friends, in order for them to avoid a high level of scrutiny over their private lives. He described his apparent role as the best man as a barefaced lie, and said that it was actually William's friends who gave the traditional speech at the reception, because his brother didn't want him to give the speech. Most shockingly, he also claimed that William was wasted on rum hours before his wedding, and that he was drunk when he went out to greet people before the ceremony. Harry said he could smell the aftermath of last night's rum on his brother's breath, and that he offered mints to him and said, "You smell of alcohol." Writing about his own wedding 7 years later, Harry then claimed that William tried to forbid him from keeping his beard, despite the Queen granting him permission to keep it. Apparently, William ordered him to shave his beard because he could not stand the thought of his younger brother having a perk that he was denied. Harry said, "At one point he actually ordered me, as the heir speaking to the spare, to shave, and he explained to his grandmother that his beard felt like a shield to his anxiety, and that was the reason for the different standard." Number 5, fight with his brother. Harry recounted what he said was a physical attack by his brother, fueled by tension of his marriage to Meghan Markle in 2019. He claimed that William called his wife difficult, rude, and abrasive when he arrived at Nottingham Cottage. He was apparently very worked up and launched into a rant about Meghan, while Harry tried to defend her and told him that he was just repeating the press narrative and that he expected better from him. He wrote that by this point he could see that William was not being rational at all, and the 2 men started shouting over one another. The confrontation conversation escalated when they started exchanging insults, and William claimed that he was just trying to help, to which Harry said, "Are you serious? Help me? Sorry, is that what you call this? Helping me?" It was then that his brother lunged at him. Harry wrote, "It all happened so fast, so very fast. He grabbed me by the collar, ripping my necklace, and he knocked me to the floor. I landed on the dog's bowl, which cracked under my back and the pieces were cutting into me. I lay there for a moment dazed, then I got to my feet and I told him to get out." William then urged him to hit back, but when Harry refused to do so, he said to have apologized and told him not to tell Meghan about what happened. Harry said this resulted in a visible injury to his back. So it seems like there was a lot of pent-up rage that came out during the fight. Number 4, he didn't believe Diana was gone. In another excerpt from his memoir, Harry recounts the emotional moment that he drove through the same Paris tunnel where his mother died in 1997, and he purposefully asked the driver to drive at the same speed that she was going when her car crashed. He wrote, "It had been a very bad idea. I'd had plenty of bad ideas in my 23 years, but this one was uniquely ill-conceived. I told myself that I wanted closure, but I didn't really. Deep down, I'd hoped to feel in that tunnel what I'd felt when JLP gave me the police files. Disbelief. Doubt. Instead, that was a night all doubt fell away. I got the closure that I was pretending to seek, I got it in spades, and now I'd never be able to get rid of it." During his interview on 60 Minutes, Harry claimed that he and his brother believed for many years that their mother may have faked her death and would one day return to their lives. Quoting an extract from his memoir, Anderson Cooper said, "You write in the book, you say, I'd often say to myself first thing in the morning, maybe this is the day. Maybe this is the day that she's going to reappear." To which Harry said, "I just refused to accept that she was gone. I had huge amounts of hope." He said that he once thought that maybe this is all part of a plan, and his mother would eventually reappear. This was a belief that he held on to until he was an adult. Number 3, William is his arch nemesis. In one part of the book, Harry describes the moment he returned to the UK for their grandfather Prince Philip's funeral. He wrote, "When I looked at Willie, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time since we were little, taking in every detail, his familiar scowl, which had always been the norm in his dealings with me." He also mentioned his brother's baldness, saying that it was alarming and more advanced than mine. He also thought William's resemblance to their mother Diana had faded, so for whatever reason he felt the need to include some personal attacks on William's appearance. If anything, this part of the book has been heavily criticized as unnecessary and really petty. During his Good Morning America interview, the host Michael Strand inquired about his choice of wording, seeing as he calls William both his beloved brother and his arch nemesis, to which Harry says, "There has always been this competition between us, weirdly. I think that it plays into, or was played by, the heir/spare," referring to William's role as the future king, while Harry moved down the line of succession as he and Kate had children. In his new Netflix documentary, he actually claims that this wedge that was created between the two brothers was all because William took the institution side, and that's what caused the deterioration of their relationship. Number 2, racism in the family. In a 60 Minutes interview, Anderson Cooper asked Harry about claims that he made in his memoir that certain members of the family were uneasy towards Meghan when she was first introduced. He asked what was that mistrust based on, and Harry said the fact that she was American, an actress, divorced, black, biracial, with a black mother. He said those were just 4 of the typical stereotypes that becomes a feeding frenzy for the British press. He went on to say that the family actually does read the tabloids, so whether they walk around saying they believe it or not, the headlines are still leaving an imprint in their mind. So if they have that judgment based on a stereotype right at the beginning, it's very, very hard not to get over that. In his memoir, Harry also reflects on the controversial costume that he wore in 2005, and revealed that it was actually William and Kate who encouraged him to wear it. Apparently the couple howled with laughter when they saw him in the outfit ahead of the Halloween party. Of course, pictures from the party were leaked to the press, who plastered it all over their front pages. The incident was so scandalous it rocked the headlines of every tabloid for weeks. With its racist undertones, it was a risky enough outfit for anyone to wear, let alone a British royal. For a lot of people, finding out that William and Kate encouraged the controversial costume is a massive bombshell, considering all the accusations of racism against the family in recent years. And coming in at number 1, living in William's shadow. Harry's novel really delves into his feelings about being regarded as the spare son, the fact that he was never considered on the same level of importance as William when it came to their roles in the royal family. It's something that caused a lot of tension between them over the years. The book's title comes from an old saying in royal and aristocratic circles that the first son is an heir to titles, power, and fortune, and the second is therefore a spare spare if anything should happen to the firstborn. This is a conflict at the heart of the book. Because of the line of succession to the British throne, William has spent his whole life as an heir, while Harry has always been referred to as the spare, and this has clearly had a major effect on him over the years, which is part of the reason why he came to deeply resent his older brother. We can see this through the various chapters on his childhood, his schooling, his career as a royal and in the British Army, as well as his relationship with his parents and brother. Early on in the book, Harry recounts the story of how his father, King Charles, supposedly said to his mother on the day of his birth, "Wonderful, now you've given me an heir and a spare, my work is done." Overall, there's no telling how this kind of thinking would have shaped Harry's life, as he was born into a very unique set of circumstances. Number 10, why he went public. Anderson Cooper asked a question that had seemingly been on everyone's lips for quite some time. He brought up the fact that Harry and Meghan stepped back from their senior royal roles in January of 2020 and relocated to North America, then inked a deal with Netflix and gave a tell-all interview to Oprah Winfrey just months later. Much to everyone's confusion, since it seemed like they wanted to live a private life and give up their royal titles. Since the Megxit, the couple has continued to use the Royal Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles that they received from the Queen on their 2018 wedding day, and Cooper asked, "Why not renounce your titles as Duke and Duchess?" In response, Harry said, "And what difference would that make?" Then Cooper said, "One of the criticisms that you've received is that, okay fine, you want to move to California, you want to step back from the institutional role. Why be so public? Why reveal conversations you've had with your father or your brother? You say you've tried to do this privately." Harry said, "And every single time I've tried to do it privately, there have been briefings and leakages and planting of stories against me and my wife. You know, the family motto is never complain, never explain, but it's just a motto. It doesn't really hold." To this day, many have pointed out that Harry has neglected to specify exactly which stories were leaked and planted against them, so his allegation continues to be very vague without anything solid to back it up. Number 9, push to the limit. The fact that Harry has been so outspoken about the private details of his relationship with William just goes to show you how far their rift has gone, to the point where it feels irreparable. In his latest media appearance, Harry spoke to Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes and explained why he felt compelled to speak publicly about life within the royal family. He spoke about the time when he and Meghan stepped down from their senior duties in March of 2020, and explained that he'd sent countless emails and letters and messages over the 6 years, but he was not able to speak with his family privately. He also talked about the dirty game that his family would play, and said they will feed or have a conversation with the correspondent, and that correspondent will literally be spoon-fed information and write the story. Harry went on to say, "So when we're being told for the last 6 years we can't put a statement out to protect you, but you do it for the other members of the family, there comes a point when silence is betrayal." However, he did admit to wanting his father and brother back, even though he says they've shown absolutely no willingness to reconcile. So at this point, it would be a miracle if they ever speak to each other again. Number 8, his family was complicit. During his interview with 60 Minutes, Prince Harry said that he was incredibly naive about how the British press would treat his relationship with Meghan. He also noted the relationship itself had given him a new awareness, saying what Meghan had to go through was similar in some part to what Kate and what Camilla went through, although with very different circumstances. He then went on to say, "But then you add in the race element, which was what the British press jumped on straight away. I went into this incredibly naive. I had no idea that the press was so bigoted. Hell, I was probably bigoted before the relationship with Meghan." Anderson Cooper then asked him if he thinks that he was bigoted before he saw Meghan, to which he said, "I don't know, put it this way, I didn't see what I now see." He then turns his attention to the family and says, "At that time, I didn't fully understand how much or how complicit the family were in that pain and suffering that was happening to my wife. And the one group of people that could have helped or could have stopped this from happening were the very people that were encouraging it to happen. And I sit here now in front of you asking for a family, not an institution. I want a family, and I understand that might be hard for them to separate the two, but to me, everything that I've witnessed and experienced over the years, there has to be a separation." Number 7, they feared for their lives. Prince Harry came out with even more accusations against his family and claimed that they had gotten into bed with the devil by cooperating with the media, and said that he could not remain silent in the face of distortions of the truth. He also said that he felt very very at peace with his life in California and had never been happier, despite fleeing his home country with Meghan and his son Archie. Harry said that Megxit was a necessity because at that time they were fearing for their lives after constant attacks from the British press. He cited a recent controversial article by Sun columnist Jeremy Clarkson, who wrote that he wanted to see Meghan be paraded through the streets naked and pelted with excrement. That article caused near universal condemnation, and Harry insisted that it was a perfect example of what he was talking about. He said, "What he said was horrific and it's hurtful and cruel towards my wife, but it also encourages other people around the UK and around the world, men particularly, to go and think that's acceptable to treat women that way. To use my stepmother's words recently as well, there is a global pandemic of violence against women." So clearly he wanted to make that point that hateful articles and headlines have real life consequences, and that's why he felt that Meghan was actually being threatened. Number 6, wanting to reconcile. Although he insisted that he is now happy with his life away from his family, Harry claimed that he does in fact love his brother and father and wanted to reconcile with them. He said that he 100% believed that forgiveness could really happen, but he also said that now the ball is in their court, saying, "I would like to get my father back. I would like to have my brother back." Anderson Cooper then asked him how he could expect to reconcile with them since he's taken a flamethrower to family bridges, to which Harry said, "Well, they've shown absolutely no willingness to reconcile up until this point, and I'm not sure how honesty is burning bridges." According to Harry, that silence would only allow negative patterns to continue. He said, "So I don't know how staying silent is ever gonna make things better. That's genuinely what I believe." Later in the clip, Cooper asked him if he could see a day where he would return to being a full-time member of the royal family, to which he simply said no. He then said, "But it never needed to be this way. I want a family, not an institution." In Harry and Meghan's Netflix documentary, he also confessed that he misses the family gatherings at certain times of the year, and he also misses seeing his friends. He explained that he's lost certain friends now, which just speaks to how much he really sacrificed in the process of breaking away from the royal family. Number 5, they were villainized. At another point in the interview, Harry referred to the way that he and Meghan were treated by the royal family. Instead of righting the wrongs that were happening and coming out in defense of the couple, Harry said that his family felt as though it was better to keep the narrative going that they were villains. He claims that the British press was also an antagonist in their relationship that he had with the rest of the family, as the tabloids wanted to create as much conflict as possible. And according to him, that's part of the reason why William turned against Meghan, because he consistently read the negative stories about her. He said, "The saddest part of that is certain members of my family and the people that work for them are complicit in that conflict. So much of the relationship between me and William and the way it played out was because of the narrative, or the distorted narrative that was being pushed through the British press, and some people within his office that were feeding him utter nonsense." Harry also went on Good Morning America and said that the press pitched William and Kate against Meghan. He said that there's always been competition between him and his brother, but it was exacerbated by media attention. He went on to say, "They always pitched us against each other. They pitched Kate and Meghan against each other, and when he was asked if he thought this made the two women go against each other, he said yes without question." Number 4, he believed Diana faked her death. Another shocking revelation from his 60 Minutes interview came when Prince Harry said that he and his older brother believed for many years that their mother, the late Princess Diana, may have faked her death and would one day return to their lives. Diana was killed in a car crash in Paris in August of 1997, when Harry was 12 and William was 15. Over the years, she was a topic of fascination and scrutiny for the British tabloids, and also the media outlets around the world. Sadly, she was being hounded by paparazzi in the moments before her death. Quoting an extract from his memoir, Spare, Anderson Cooper said, "You write in the book, you say, I'd often say to myself first thing in the morning, maybe this is the day. Maybe this is the day that she's going to reappear." To which Harry said, "I just refused to accept that she was gone. I had huge amounts of hope." He said that he once thought maybe this is all part of a plan and his mother would eventually reappear into his life. Interestingly enough, he said that he held on to the belief that Diana was still alive until he was an adult. At 23, he visited Paris for the first time and asked a taxi driver to take him through the same tunnel where his mother was killed. Apparently, he even asked the driver to drive at the same speed that she was traveling at before her death, because he felt that he needed to take this journey and ride the same route. If anything, that was one of the saddest moments in the interview. Number 3, he never liked Camilla. In a shocking part of the interview, Prince Harry accused Camilla, the Queen Consort, of leaking stories about the family to the British media, all as a part of her campaign to rehabilitate her image. He also claimed that both he and his brother Prince William had asked the king not to marry her. He said, "We didn't think it was necessary. We thought that it was gonna cause more harm than good, and that if he was now with this person, that surely that would be enough." But then both of them eventually came around to the idea because they wanted their father to be happy, and they saw how happy he was with her. Camilla did go on to marry Charles in 2005, 8 years after the death of Diana, but it's common knowledge that the two of them had been involved romantically on and off for decades, and Diana had once famously referred to Camilla as the third person in their marriage. Because of that, her reputation was in tatters. Harry said this is why Camilla was so dangerous, because she needed to rehabilitate her image, seeing as she's been cast as the villain by the press for her part in the collapse of his parents' marriage. He said that made her dangerous because of the connections that she was forging within the British press, and there was open willingness on both sides to trade information. And with a family built on hierarchy, and with her on the way being to Queen Consort, there was gonna be people or bodies left in the street because of that. Number 2, he feels trapped. During his interview on Good Morning America, Harry spoke about his frustration with the fact that he can't ever get out of the royal family. He said that in the end, the palace had allowed them no compromise over their half-in, half-out hybrid plan to move to Canada while also still serving the crown. Apparently, this is what led to the Megxit crisis in 2020. He said, "This was really sad because I still to this day believe that this was entirely possible." The interviewer then said, "There are going to be people who say, why don't they either be in or get out? Because if you get out, there's no hypocrisy." To which Harry responded by saying, "I can't ever get out, and I'm incredibly aware of my position. I'm incredibly grateful for the life that I've had and continue to live, but there's no version of me ever able to get out of this. I was stunned that my family would allow security to be taken away, especially at the most vulnerable point for us." When he was asked about critics who say that he sold out his family, he says that the only way he could protect his family was to correct mistruths and write about the truth in one place, even though he did admit that writing the book in the first place was feeding the beast anyway. To be fair, he did say that he takes some kind of responsibility for his role in the breakdown of his relationship with his brother, but he then said, "What people don't know is the efforts that I've gone to resolve this rift privately." And coming in at number 1, William and Kate never liked Meghan. Over the weekend, Harry also spoke to ITV's Tom Bradby and addressed the tension in the family when he started seeing his now wife. When he told William and Kate about his relationship with Meghan, he said, "There was a lot of stereotyping that was happening that I was guilty of as well at the beginning around her being an American actress. Unfortunately, that stereotype was causing a bit of a barrier to them to introduce or welcome her in." Bradby then asked, "The impression is that from the get-go they didn't get on. Fair?" To which Harry agreed and then claimed that that was for a lot of different reasons, saying that, "I had to put a lot of hope into the idea that, it would be William and Kate and me and whoever. I thought the four of us would bring me and William closer together. We could go out and do work together, which I did a lot of as a third wheel to them, which was fun at times, but also I guess slightly awkward at times as well." He went on to say that he didn't think they were ever expecting him to get into a relationship with someone like Meghan, who had a very successful career. According to Harry, this was the root of them not understanding each other, and at one point William even said that it would be difficult to marry her for this reason. Number 10, the complaints. In his highly anticipated autobiography Spare, Prince Harry recounts what he says was a physical attack by his brother, and it was all because of his marriage to Meghan Markle. Describing the fight which broke out at his London home in 2019, Harry claims that William called his wife difficult, rude, and abrasive, which Harry says was just parroting of the press narrative about her. Apparently, William wanted to talk about the whole rolling catastrophe of their relationship and the struggles with the press, but when he arrived at Nottingham Cottage, Harry said that he was already piping hot. It was then that William launched into a rant about Meghan and obviously had several complaints that he wanted to air. Harry tried to defend her and told William that he was just repeating the press narrative and that he expected better from him. He wrote that by this point he could see that William was not being rational, and the two men started shouting over each other. But William's complaints reflect the basis of the conflict between Meghan and the royal family. In her interview with The Cut, she explained that her problems stemmed from her sheer Americanness, her desire to ask a lot of questions and to never be involved with something that she couldn't totally have her hands on, all of which violated the unspoken social norm in the royal family. Number 9, the fight. The confrontation at Nottingham Cottage became heated to the point where they physically hurt each other. Harry said things really escalated when they started exchanging insults at one another. When William claimed that he was just trying to help, Harry said, "Are you serious? Help me? Sorry, is that what you call all this, helping me. Apparently that comment further angered his brother, who then lunged at him. At this point, Harry said that he went to the kitchen and gave his brother a glass of water, trying to get him to cool down. Harry wrote, "He set down the water, called me another name, and then came at me. It all happened so fast, so very fast. He grabbed me by the collar, ripping my necklace and knocked me to the floor. I landed on the dog's bowl, which cracked under my back. The pieces were cutting into me. I lay there for a moment, dazed, and then got to my feet and told him to get out." Apparently, William urged him to hit back, but when Harry refused to do so, he decided to leave. Although when he did return, he is said to have apologized and told him not to tell Meghan about what happened. So obviously when William did return, he was very regretful about the way that he attacked his brother, and he might have felt ashamed that it even got to that point. Harry said this resulted in visible injury to his back, so it seemed like there was a lot of pent-up rage that came out during the fight. Number 8, the spare. Something else that played a big role in the deterioration of their relationship was the fact that Harry was never considered on the same level of importance as William when it came to their roles in the royal family. The book's title comes from an old saying in royal and aristocratic circles that a first son is an heir to titles, power and fortune, and a second son is therefore a spare if anything should happen to the firstborn. This is a conflict that is at the heart of the book. Because of the line of succession to the British throne, William has spent his whole life as an heir, while Harry has always been referred to as the spare, and this has clearly had an effect on him over the years, which is part of the reason why he came to deeply resent his older brother. We can see this through the various chapters on his childhood, his schooling, his career as a royal and in the British Army, as well as his relationship with his parents and his brother. Early on in the book, Harry recounts the story of how his father, King Charles, supposedly said to his mother, the late Princess Diana, on the day of his birth, "Wonderful, now you've given me an heir and a spare. My work is done." Overall, there's no telling how this kind of thinking would have shaped Harry's life. As we know, he always wanted to break out on his own and become something other than just a backup brother. Number 7, pushed to the limit. The fact that Harry has been so outspoken about the private details of his relationship with William just goes to show you how far their rift has gone, to the point where it feels irreparable. In his latest media appearance, Harry spoke to Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes and explained why he felt compelled to speak publicly about life within the royal family after he and Meghan stepped down from their senior duties in March of 2020. He said, "Every single time I've tried to speak privately, there have been briefings and leakings and planting of stories against me and my wife. You know, the family motto is never complain, never explain. But it isn't just a motto. They will feed or have a conversation within the correspondent, and that correspondent will literally be spoon-fed information and write the story." Harry went on to say, "So when we're being told for the last 6 years we can't put a statement out to protect you, but you do it for other members of the family, there becomes a point when silence is betrayal." Later in the clip, Anderson Cooper asked Harry if he could see a day where he would return to being a full-time member of the royal family, to which he simply said no. However, he did admit to wanting his father and his brother back in his life, even though he said they've shown absolutely no willingness to reconcile. So at this point, it would be a miracle if they even speak to each other ever again. Number 6, the controversial uniform. Back in 2005, Prince Harry attended a costume party dressed in a uniform that was so scandalous, it rocked the headlines of every tabloid for weeks. With its racist undertones, it was a risky enough outfit for anyone to wear, let alone a British royal. Of course, pictures from the party were leaked to the press, who plastered it all over their front pages. Now in his new memoir, Harry makes a truly shocking accusation. He claims that William and his wife Kate Middleton not only knew about the costume, but approved of it beforehand. After being unsure of what to wear to the Halloween party, Harry said that he phoned them and asked what they thought about the outfit. He even tried it on in front of them. He said, "I rented it, along with the ridiculous mustache, and returned home." Willie and Kate were laughing. It was even worse than Willie's leotard costume, much more ridiculous, which again was the point. If this is true, it's seriously one of the most shocking allegations in the book. At the time of the scandal, Harry was 20 years old and William was 22. They were both old enough to know better, but only one of them ever apologized for it. If anything, the fact that William and Kate only laughed about it shows that they were equally to blame for the insensitive costume, which only gets worse when you take into account the accusations of racism that Harry has also leveled against the royal family as an institution. Number 5, the funeral of Prince Philip. In the book's introduction, Harry wrote about the secret meeting at Frogmore Gardens following Prince Philip's funeral in April of 2021, and he revealed that his family members had come for a fight as they attempted to reconcile. He compares a major argument that he had with his brother and father to a duel, and said that it started when they were trying to come to an understanding about why he and Meghan had left the royal family. Harry wrote, "If they didn't know why I'd left, maybe they just didn't know me at all, and maybe they never really did. He went on to say, I tried to explain my side of things. I wasn't at my best. For starters, I was still nervous, fighting to keep my emotions in check while also striving to be succinct and precise. More, I'd vowed not to let this encounter devolve into another argument, but I quickly discovered that it wasn't up to me. Harry even recalled being cut off by one or both members of his family every time he tried to speak. Eventually, the argument between himself and William started getting heated, so much so that King Charles stepped in and begged his sons not to make his final years a misery. If their father truly had to break them apart, it means that the argument had escalated to a point of no return. If anything, it's sad to see that Charles felt that he had to do that in order for them to not hurt each other. Number 4, the Sandringham Summit. In the 5th episode of Harry and Meghan's Netflix series, the couple recounts a family meeting that took place to discuss the decision to reduce their roles as working members of the royal family. Meghan said, imagine a conversation, a roundtable discussion about the future of your life, when the stakes are this high and you as the mom and the wife and the target in many regards aren't invited to have a seat at the table. Harry claimed that there were arrangements made to ensure that she was left out of the discussion, but maybe this was for a good reason, as the meeting quickly turned into a disaster. Harry said, it was terrifying to have my brother scream and shout at me, and my father say things that simply weren't true, and my grandmother quietly sit there and sort of take it all in. He described that meeting as hard and said that it ended without a solid plan of action. Harry described the moment and said, the saddest part of it was this wedge created between myself and my brother, so that he's now on the institution side. Part of that I get, I understand. That's his inheritance. So to some extent, it's already ingrained in him that part of his responsibility is the survivability and continuation of this institution. This was one of the many revelations that came out in the documentary, but more than anything, it really paints a picture of how strained their relationship had become. Number 3, excluded from the family. In their Netflix docuseries, Harry and Meghan spoke about the moment that they saw the rest of the royal family at Westminster Abbey for the Commonwealth service. This was apparently the first time they saw them in person since announcing their decision to step back from their duties, and Harry recalled that the meeting looked and felt cold. He said, I felt really distant from the rest of my family, which is interesting because so much of how they operate is what it looks like and not what it feels like, but it looked cold and it also felt cold. After discussing the death of his grandfather, Prince Philip, Harry brought up the time that he flew back to the UK to attend his funeral and admitted that it was hard going back for the first time since he and Meghan left the family, and it was difficult talking to his father and brother because they were very much focused on the same misinterpretation of the whole situation. He said, none of us wanted to talk about it at my grandfather's funeral, but we did. I've had to make peace with the fact that we're probably never going to get genuine accountability or a genuine apology. So Harry believes that when he returned to the UK, his family were already giving him the cold shoulder, and it was at this moment that he realized that they would never apologize for what they've apparently done. So just from the story, we can see that the brothers absolutely cannot see eye to eye about the way that Meghan and Harry were supposedly treated by the family. Number 2, stories planted against them. One of the biggest accusations that Harry leveled against William was that he and his office had been planting negative stories about Meghan. Harry spoke of the dirty game that was played by the royal communications teams and the media, where they would trade damaging stories about one family member in exchange for a negative story about another one being dropped. He said there's leaking, but there's also planting of stories. So if the communications team wants to be able to remove a negative story about their principal, they will trade and give you something about someone else's principal. He went on to say, to see my brother's office copy the very same thing that we promised the two of us would never do, that was heartbreaking. I would far rather get destroyed in the press than play along with this game, all this business of trading. That's a pretty big accusation to swing against William, to insinuate that he or his people fed the press negative stories on Meghan, all to try and get the heat off of him. Harry also hinted that Kate might have been jealous of all the media attention that his wife was getting, and claimed that she was doing the job better than the person who was born to do this. He says, this is also what led to the increase of negative headlines that started coming out about her after their 2018 wedding. And coming in at number 1, criticizing William and Kate. One thing about the documentary that was glaringly obvious was that Harry and Meghan were using it as an opportunity to subtly diss William and Kate's marriage. In the first 3 episodes, when Harry explained his reasons for marrying Meghan, he compared her to his late mother, Princess Diana, and said that when it comes to choosing a partner, he was more like her than William, because he made his decision from his heart rather than his head. Then in what really sounded like a criticism of his brother, he said that in the royal family, the temptation to marry someone who fits the mold, obviously referring to Kate Middleton. He also said that as the products of divorce, both he and Meghan were determined not to make the same mistakes as their parents. For her part, Meghan recounted the first time she met William and Kate, and said that she was surprised by how formal they were, even behind closed doors. She said, I guess I'd start to understand very quickly that the formality on the outside carried through on the inside. In comparison, she said that the first time she met the couple, she wore ripped jeans and was barefoot when they came over for dinner. She said, "I was a hugger, always been a hugger. I didn't realize that this is really jarring for a lot of Brits," which seemed like an obvious attempt to make the pair out to be cold, even towards their own family. Number 10, fake footage. One of the key subjects in their new documentary is undoubtedly the intrusion of the media. It's the way that Harry and Meghan have tried to frame their situation. Harry and Meghan have tried to frame their situation as exactly what the late Princess Diana went through. In a clip showing various images of his mother being hounded by paparazzi, Harry says, "The pain and suffering of women marrying into this institution, this feeding frenzy, I was terrified. I didn't want history to repeat itself." But even this clip in the 1-minute trailer has already been criticized for using footage that is completely unrelated to the couple, all to try and paint a very specific picture of them trying to escape media attention. They also added in footage of Katie Price during her court appearance, a Harry Potter film premiere, and even a clip of Donald Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, being chased by photographers. But that's left a lot of people wondering, why don't they just use their own footage if the same thing has been happening to them? Critics have also pointed out that the images of a photographer on a balcony taking a picture of the couple while they're holding Archie is completely staged. It turns out that it was actually from a photo shoot with an accredited photographer during Harry and Meghan's visit to Cape Town. But the documentary tried to make out that this was a super intrusive moment of them being captured on camera. So obviously they've chosen to stick with the story that they just want to live a reclusive life away from it all, but they cannot help being dragged into the spotlight. Number 9, Meghan wanted to be single. Another idea that the documentary pushes is that the Duchess desperately wanted to remain single before she met Harry, and that she had a fantastic life without him before it was all ruined by the press. Meghan, who had already been married once before, said that she was intent on being single, and a friend is quoted as saying that she was set on having a single girl summer, and then came H. She said that their first private date was at the Soho House venue on Dean Street in London, which is a private members club for creatives. Harry turned up late, and Meghan said she wondered if it was a demonstration of male ego, but he was apparently sweaty with nerves and immediately dispelled her fears on that front. Their first date lasted an hour, and she said she thought Harry was great fun. She then asked him to dinner again, back at the club, which he told her was so American and forward. The camera then cuts to Meghan's friend and Suits co-star Abigail Spencer, who says she had a whole life before she met H. Another one of her friends says she had a core group of friends. Meg was very outgoing, super social, living in Toronto. She was very open-hearted. Meghan then says, "I lived in a great little residential community. I had my 2 dogs. It was great and low-key. Go for hikes and walks, go to set. I loved my job." So all in all, she wanted to reiterate that she really loved her life before she met Harry. Number 8, they both made sacrifices. During the first hour-long episode, which includes a sit-down interview with the couple, as well as clips from a video diary, Harry can be heard saying, "This is about duty and service. And I feel as though being a part of this family, it is my duty to uncover this exploitation and bribery that happens within our media. My job is to keep my family safe, but the nature of being born into this position and the level of hate that is being stirred up in the last 3 years, especially against my wife and my son, I'm generally concerned for the safety of my family." Harry describes his and Meghan's relationship as a great love story, saying that she sacrificed everything she ever knew, the freedom that she had, to join him in his world. And then pretty soon after that, he ended up sacrificing everything that he knew to join her in her world. So basically, Harry made it seem like they both gave up certain things to be with each other. Meghan gave up freedom and the ability to live her life how she wanted. And then obviously Harry ended up giving up his royal duties and separated from his family to be with her. Later on, he also brought up the situation with her father Thomas and said, "Of course, it's incredibly sad what happened. She had a father before this, and now she doesn't have a father. And I shouldered that, because if Meg wasn't with me, then her dad would still be her dad." Number 7, dealing with paparazzi. Meghan opened up about the fact that she essentially had no training for her new role as a member of the royal family. She had recounted the blunt warning that she got over the phone from Harry shortly after news broke of their relationship in 2016. She said that while she was living in Toronto and filming Suits, she encountered spotted a pack of 9 or 10 paparazzi as she was leaving a florist. She said, they were all sort of blocking the cars going, "Hey, how you doing, Meghan?" And I said, "Oh, thanks. Stay warm, guys." Then she said, "I remember Harry saying the next day, 'You can't talk to them.' And I was like, 'I'm just trying to be pleasant. I don't know what to do. I've never dealt with this before.' And he said, 'Yes, but the UK media is saying you love it. You're smiling. You love it.'" The screen then cuts to images of tabloids that came out about Meghan, implying that she liked the attention from paparazzi. Essentially, the Duchess believes that the press took advantage of her naivete in order to generate negative headlines. Although at one point she also says, "It's so funny if I look back at it now, because now I know so much and I'm glad I didn't then, because I could just authentically be myself without so much preparation." Number 6, stories planted against them. Another massive allegation that Harry and Meghan made in their new documentary was that the royal family not only failed to support them during the media storm after their wedding, but at one point the palace even went as far as planting stories about them. In one clip, Harry says, "There's a hierarchy of the family. There's leaking, but there's also planting of stories. It's a dirty game." Which is followed up by a clip of Meghan crying and saying, "I realize they're never gonna protect you." The explosive news series claims that there was a war against Meghan to suit other people's agendas. So essentially, they're claiming that the royal family were behind a lot of the negative stories that were published about her. During her infamous sit-down with Oprah, Meghan made it clear that Kate had a role in a scandalous report that came out about her during the royal wedding, when there was a series of headlines saying that she left Kate in tears due to a disagreement they had about bridesmaid dresses. According to Meghan, the reverse happened, and it was actually Kate who made her cry. And then she says, "I would have never wanted that to come out about her ever, even though it happened." So she made it seem like Kate was the real instigator, but unlike her sister-in-law, she would never want a bad story to come out about her. But obviously she was just upset that Kate did not publicly denounce those headlines, even though she did apologize in private. Number 5, Meghan's family. The Duchess said that she believed the British press were hell-bent on trying to make her mother fodder for the tabloids. She said, "You just have my mom, who's classy and quiet, and then you have the other side of my family that is just acting differently." Meghan went on to discuss her half-sister Samantha Markle, who she said was suddenly everywhere when her relationship with Harry went public. Meghan was bewildered by her comments in the press and said, "I don't know your middle name, I don't know your birthday. You're telling these people you raised me and calling me Princess Pushy." She also addressed the incredibly sad series of events that led to the falling out with her father, Thomas Markle. Meghan claimed that she was unaware that her father was working with the media. She said she didn't know that he was selling staged pictures of himself to tabloids until a week out from the wedding. Some of these set-up pictures included him working out to get into shape and sitting in a cafe reading a book about the UK. It got to a certain point where her communications officer encouraged her to call her father to find out if it's true or not because it could really be damaging. She ended up calling him and said, "Look, they're saying you're taking money from the tabloids for staged photos. Is it true?" Thomas denied the allegations, but Meghan said that she still didn't believe him. Number 4, questioning her relationship. As a paparazzi presence escalated in Meghan's life, the documentary reveals that at a certain point, her friends tried to make her second-guess her relationship with Harry. Meghan said, "When all of that started happening, my friends and the people in my life who love me and care about me are like, is he worth this? Like, we know that you're happy and we know that you love him, but is he worth this? Look at what's happening to your life." The camera then cuts to an interview with her former personal assistant Chantel Humphrey, who says, "Meg would go to the grocery store and get recognized, and people would say, 'Aren't you that girl from Suits?' Other than that, she had so much freedom. She had such a beautiful life before everything exploded." At one point, Meghan says that she went to the police to flag that she was being stalked by photographers, but she was told, "There's really nothing we can do because of who you're dating." But this changed when she received her first death threat, as she was given security detail to escort her to and from the Suits set. At this point, she says her inner circle began asking her a tough question of whether or not she should be continuing her relationship with Harry. For his part, Harry said, "Dating became a combination of car chases, anti-surveillance driving, and disguises, which isn't a particularly healthy way to start a relationship." Number 3, meeting the royals. The couple got candid about the reception that Meghan received from the royals when she met them for the first time. Reflecting on the time that Will and Kate came over for dinner, Meghan recalled looking a little too casual, walking around barefoot in ripped jeans. She said, "I was a hugger. I've always been a hugger. I didn't realize that is really jarring for a lot of Brits. I guess I'd start to understand very quickly that the formality on the outside carried through on the inside. There is a forward-facing way of being, and you close the door and go, we can relax now, but that formality carries over on both sides, and that was what was surprising to me." Meghan also spoke about meeting Harry's late grandmother, Queen Elizabeth. She said she didn't know she was going to meet her until moments before, and she remembers thinking Harry was joking when he asked her if she knew how to curtsy, to which she said it was so intense. In a more serious moment, Harry said that his family members were incredibly impressed by Meghan, although some had some obvious misgivings. Quote, "Some of them didn't quite know what to do with themselves. They were surprised. The fact I was dating an American actress was probably what clouded their judgment more than anything else at the beginning, thinking, this won't last." Meghan agreed and said that she felt the UK had a particular view of what being an actress meant, and that it was easy to typecast. Number 2, racism in the family. Harry revealed that certain members of the royal family questioned why Meghan should be protected from negative press coverage, reflecting on one headline declaring that his new girlfriend was almost straight out of Compton, which was a reference to her upbringing in Los Angeles. Harry says that the palace's direction to the couple was, "Don't say anything." He said, "But what people need to understand is, as far as a lot of the family were concerned, everything that she was being put through, they had been put through as well. So it was almost like a rite of passage. And some of the members of the family were like, my wife had to go through that, so why should your girlfriend be treated any differently? Why should you get special treatment? Why should she be protected?" And I said, "The difference here is the race element." He went on to say that there is a huge level of unconscious bias in the royal family, and that it's actually no one's fault. But once it has been pointed out or identified within yourself, you need to make it right. Meghan's mother, Doria Ragland, also spoke about some of the news coverage, claiming that the press would take pictures of different parts of Skid Row, which is an impoverished area in LA, and say that was where she lived and that was where Meghan was from. Doria also said that she initially warned her daughter that race was playing a significant role in how the tabloid media was responding to her relationship. And number 1, the royal engagement interview. In episode 3 of the new docuseries, Meghan scoffed at the memory of her and Harry's 2017 royal engagement interview. The episode begins with a flashback to the couple's memorable first TV appearance, which Meghan called an orchestrated reality show, revealing that from their adorable photo shoot to the sit-down chat, everything about that announcement was rehearsed. Meghan said from the get-go they weren't allowed to tell their true story when they were faced with questions about their relationship and her family. A flashback of the BBC interview then sees the Duchess looking extremely uncomfortable when she's asked whether or not Harry had met her father, Thomas Markle, who did not attend her 2018 wedding. So according to the new documentary, that interview was essentially fake and they weren't able to fully express themselves. It turns out there were plenty of details about their engagement that they had to keep to themselves. Harry confirmed that the proposal actually took place at home as Meghan was roasting a chicken, and says that he inadvertently tipped her off to something special when he brought home champagne. To set the scene, he set up electric candles in the courtyard of their Kensington Palace cottage, and of course, he got down on one knee.